All right, we have a 2014 Highlander, and I broke the tail light, so we're going to replace this thing. Now, from what I've read, 2014 through 16 is this same tail light. Any other years is going to be completely different. So we have the new tail light here, and if you notice, it's actually a pretty darn good replication of what is currently on there. So that should work pretty well. Now there's two different methods on replacing this. There's the simple method, which would be just to remove this tail light, change these sockets out, and then put the new tail light back in. I'm going to show that, but I'm also going to show taking the inside of the car apart so that we can actually replace this whole thing using the original wiring harness. So we'll start by taking the broken tail light off. We'll need a few tools, some screwdrivers to pry some stuff with. I like to use a putty knife too, just because it's thinner, it can get into some thinner spots. But you'll need a ratchet and a 10mm socket. I don't have a long, deep well socket for some reason, so I just got an extension on here. So let's take this off. Once you get those bolts out, this whole tail light will actually slide backwards and come out. And then you've got a grommet here for the wiring harness inside. Now, like I showed you earlier, you can actually take these sockets out individually and change the wiring altogether. You could just clip this. On the new one, it actually has a screw that you could undo and take all these out and just replace the bezel itself and leave the old sockets and bulbs in there. But we're going to take the whole inside apart and replace this whole thing right from the plug. We'll start by taking the tray liner out. And then the jack access cover. Now this tray here is not bolted in whatsoever. It's only snapped in. So get all those snaps undone, it will lift out. This whole piece is all one piece that's only attached with this nut right here. Also the 10mm. Now you've got these little plastic tabs that keep the carpet attached to it. When you take these off, you want to be pretty careful not to break these, otherwise your carpet will be loose when you go to put it back together. But if you notice on the back side of this, there's a piece of plastic, so if you just use that as a lift, you can get these carpet keepers out pretty easily. Okay, once you have all those out, it's going to take a little bit of prying to get this off, but you'll feel where it's attached. There's a point here, there's a couple of points here, but this whole thing's going to lift out. And as we take this apart, what we're trying to do, obviously, is get into here. So there's only two attachment points that we really need to be concerned about. There's one behind here, which is also a 10mm bolt, and there's one behind here. Now that we got those off, that should loosen this whole panel up enough that we can get our hands in there and access what we need to. So obviously careful with the screwdriver so you don't scratch your plastic. Okay, so inside here is your plug for your taillight bezel. Now the retainer clip is on the back side of this, which I don't know if you can see that, but you'll have to squeeze on the bottom just a little bit, and that'll pull the plug out. Now we can take the grommet out. Pull the entire thing out and replace this whole piece. If you wanted to, you could keep the bulbs. You've got a clear bulb for the brake light and an amber bulb for the turn signal. With your halogen bulbs, it's good practice if you want to take these out to use a napkin or a rag or pair of gloves or something so you don't get any of your finger oil on there. Supposedly that could weaken the glass and shorten the life. I don't know if I necessarily believe that theory, but that's what they say. Okay, new light. Put the plug in there. Just have a nice weather seal on there. And then we'll slide this back into position. Make sure everything lines up good. Have you noticed in here that the bolts actually go into some plastic retainers, so it isn't going to take very much torque to keep them in there. You won't want to tighten them very tight or you'll mess that plastic up and then the tail might tend to rattle on you. So maybe hand tight, just a smidge more. All right. it back in. Plug's only going to go in one way, of course. Did you feel it click? Now, it's always a good practice to test your lights before you put everything back together, so I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, I tested the functionality of the lights. Everything looks good, so now we'll put it all back together. Got these little retainers here that it snaps back into. This bolt here, you can feel pretty confident in tightening it down fairly tight because it is actually a tie down. So it is actually bolted to the body of the car. You can use that for tie downs later if you want to. Put the vanity cap back in here. This little tab's going to slide underneath that slot. That'll snap back in there and cover up that bolt. Put this piece back in, make sure all snaps together good. Jack and storage tray back in here. Our carpet retainers back in, they'll just press in. The holes lined up. Place the nut for our tray. Other storage bin. Feel it snap back into place when you find the right spots. vanity cover for this one. Place the tray liner, and we're good to go. Hopefully that helps you guys out for the ones that want to fully replace the taillight bezel on the driver's side of a 2014 to 2016 Highlander.